love her. She's pretty much up for everything.
Always a pleasure to see you, Lucy. It's time.
Excuse me, ladies. Seems like you're not the only ones who want a piece of me. I'll see you later.
Johnny!
Well, I'd like to say it's a pleasure to see you on my Earth outside my club, but it's not.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Charlie. Press F in the chat for the multiverse. This is going to be my Crisis on Infinite Earths Episode 3 video. There's a whole bunch of Easter eggs. We'll break it all down. If you're new to my channel, be sure to subscribe to get all the Easter egg videos. We'll do a new round of that Flash Ring giveaway. All you have to do to enter is be a subscriber and leave your best theory for how this is all going to end. Careful for spoilers if you haven't seen the episode yet, but we'll do top 10 WTF and Easter eggs as we go along, starting with number 10, the Birds of Prey cameo at the top. We go to Earth 203 because 2003 is the date when the original Birds of Prey CW television series ended. We see the Huntress character from that TV show cameo talking to Oracle Barbara Gordon, also played by the actress from that TV show. She didn't come on screen, but she was in the comms, so the actress did record voiceover dialogue. Just like the actor who played Captain Cold didn't come back to be on screen, but he did come back to record new voiceover dialogue and be the AI of the Wave Rider during the crossover. They white that Earth, then number 9 WTF, we learn about the last 3 Paragons. So they've already found 4, but they named the last 3 as the Flash as the Paragon of Love, which seems like a weird choice. Even the other characters say, that's new, that's kind of weird, why would you pick Love as the one that Barry gets to be? Martian Manhunter is the Paragon of Honor. They've kind of been setting him up for a bigger arc this season, I think because there's just been a tragic lack of Martian Manhunter in previous years' crossovers, and they wanted to find a bigger role for him during this crossover. You have to remember that Martian Manhunter, in terms of his superpowers, is one of the most OP characters that they have, but they barely use him during any of the crossovers in previous years. So I think making him a Paragon is a way for them to kind of address that during this year's crossover. But then Ryan Choi is named as the last Paragon of Humanity. Now, I knew he was coming on the TV show because we saw pictures of him and they announced that he was coming on the TV show. But because Brandon Routh is actually going to leave Legends of Tomorrow this season, I believe that he's going to permanently replace him and become the new version of the Atom, just like they did in the comics. So the Ryan Choi that they introduced you'll recognize as Osric Chow from Supernatural, and just like in the comics, he's a Ray Palmer fanboy. He's a professor at Ivytown, which is where the Ray Palmer character comes from in the comics, so they try to be as authentic to the comics as they could within what they've already done with the Ray Palmer character so far. I don't know if they're going to give him a new version of the Atom suit to wear when he eventually joins Legends of Tomorrow, but I think eventually they'll get there. Diggle also comes back too for the first time. We haven't seen Diggle yet, but remember, there's still 2 more episodes of the crossover, and each show's characters, like the secondary characters, tend to be bigger in those show's episodes. Number 8, though, the Monitor explains the Anti-Monitor's plan. So obviously, if you've read the comic book Crisis on Infinite Earths, you've already noticed a bunch of big changes that they've made. He explains that the Anti-Monitor wants to wipe the multiverse and replace it with one antimatter universe, so replacing it with a single universe. One of the reasons why he was doing this in the comics, doing just one antimatter universe instead of doing an antimatter multiverse, is because that way he would be more powerful. They get into the origin story of the Anti-Monitor during this. There are a couple Easter eggs at the end of the episode that I'll address during the video too. Number 7, Cisco finds the source of the antimatter wave is right near Star Labs, where Nash Wells was trying to get into, that special room with the symbols of the 7 different Paragons. The Monitor gives him his powers back. We find out why he has to become Vibe, because in all the visions at the beginning of The Flash this season, you see him running in his Vibe costume while the antimatter wave is washing over everyone. They wind up using his abilities in a couple different ways. The first one is to pull the memory of how to enter that room from Pariah Wells' mind, because he says that when the Anti-Monitor turned him into Pariah, he lost most of his memories, but he also explains how he'd been manipulated this whole time. So he explains all the backstory for how he'd really been following the Anti-Monitor trying to kill him instead of the Monitor like he had originally thought. Number 6 WTF, the Book of Destiny, is still a big thing during the episode. Supergirl wants to use it to bring back Earth 38, but Lex Luthor tries to explain that it'll turn her mind into jelly. It requires so much willpower. Even to just do what he did, go around killing Superman, took a lot of energy. They have a bit of a fake-out Batman v Superman moment when Batwoman whips out the kryptonite that she stole from old Batman, thinking that she might have to use it on Supergirl to stop her from trying to use the Book of Destiny. The whole reason why it was important to stop her is because if she wasn't successful, it would result in this giant feedback loop blowing the rest of them and the Wave Rider up. Number 5 was the Lucifer cameo. This is actually a big payoff. A lot of people had wondered all year long if he was going to actually have a cameo. They go to Earth 666. Of course, that would be the Earth that Lucifer is on. But Constantine is going to him to get help in entering Purgatory. So he's the one that gives them that special card that allows them to enter the version of Lian Yu that is Purgatory. Very funny joke there because Lian Yu literally translates to Purgatory in Chinese. That's the way they designed it on the Arrow TV show. But when they started the Arrow TV show, they didn't know that they'd be able to do Crisis on Infinite Earths or that Lian Yu would literally become the Purgatory of the Arrowverse. But as you can see, retroactively, a lot of things do work out that way, so it is a nice coincidence that it all worked out in the end. They have a funny joke about how to pronounce the Constantine name. He says Constantine. Constantine says, no, it's Constantine, and he says, whatever, I don't care. That's because originally the character's name is supposed to be pronounced Constantine, but so many people in pop culture all over the world the last 10 to 15 years, especially since the Keanu Reeves Constantine movie, started pronouncing it Constantine. That's just been adopted as the most common pronunciation of the name. But if you're an old school Hellblazer comic book fan, you're probably one of the people that's screaming, no, it's supposed to be pronounced Constantine. When he looks at Diggle and says, you remind me of my brother, that's his brother Amenadiel, the angel that he's talking about. And just to explain how he exists within the Arrowverse now, because they're sort of canonizing him to the Arrowverse, the whole idea is that there are infinite numbers of universes, but there's only one God, there's only one devil, only one heaven, and only one hell. So when they go to Purgatory to find Oliver's soul, there's only one version of Purgatory. But number 4, the Black Lightning cameo. Black Lightning actually has a much bigger role. He'll be back, I believe, in either part 4 or part 5 of the crossover, so it's not just a couple quick scenes that you saw in this episode. He will be back for more later. They get inside the Anti-Monitor's lab and they find the Flash of Earth 90, Barry Allen, played by John Wesley Shipp, who's trapped on the Cosmic Treadmill, or a version of the Cosmic Treadmill from the comics, powering the Anti-Monitor's antimatter gun. That's also a big Easter egg for the end of Crisis on Infinite Earths in the comics. So the Flash sacrificed himself. Everybody has seen this comic book panel. They retconned his death a little bit later, but originally what it was is the Anti-Monitor was just going to use it to destroy the last remaining Earths, and the Flash ran around it so fast that he destroyed the gun, and that's how he turned into pure Speed Force energy, seemingly dying. The reason why they killed off the Barry Allen Flash during that original comic book run is because they were transitioning to a bunch of new versions of characters, and that's when Wally West became the main version of the Flash. So that was back during the 80s. But of course, eventually, Jeff Johns brought the Flash back during Flash Rebirth, and there was a lot of Mark Waid's Flash run in the 90s where they teased Barry Allen coming back. But originally, it was just DC cleaning house. They're like, we got all these characters, all this crazy continuity that doesn't make sense. We'll develop a big comic book event to either kill people off or fix our continuity. So number 3, the Flash of Earth 90 sacrifices himself. The Monitor said the Flash had to die, but he didn't say which one. I think a lot of people had this theory that there would be a twist and it would wind up being this Barry Allen and not the main Grant Gustin version of Barry Allen. It was a great way to send him out. You probably heard the theme song from the original Flash 90s TV show. They even took a clip of the 90s Flash TV series as a flashback moment when he was sacrificing himself. He also explained that he eventually married that version of Tina McGee, which makes sense, but apparently she died at some point in the past. Black Lightning is also helping him out during all this too. He recited his catchphrase from his TV show, and they said that they wiped Black Lightning's Earth. But by the end of the episode, they wipe all universes, so it doesn't really matter that much. Number 2, though, confirming my long-running theory about Oliver for the past couple of months. Oliver is going to become the new Spectre of the Arrowverse, multiverse that is, because remember, one God, one devil, one heaven, one hell, one version of the Spectre. They find Oliver's soul, and he's in a version of the original Hood costume, the very first one from season 1. But then right around the corner, Jim Corrigan walks up and says, in another life, I used to be a police officer, but then I became the Spectre, the embodiment of God's divine justice and wrath. He says now it's Oliver's turn, and Oliver says, okay, I have to do this. So if you're not familiar with who the Spectre is, he's one of the most powerful characters in the DC multiverse. He was a big part of comic book Crisis on Infinite Earths. There's a big comic book cover with him on it going up against the Anti-Monitor. Mark Guggenheim, one of the producers on the Arrowverse show and one of the people that helped engineer this big crossover and write it, said that when they were pitching the crossover to the network, they pitched them 5 different comic book covers to explain how their crossover would work of the 12 total comic book covers from the original Crisis on Infinite Earths. My guess is that one of the comic book covers was this one with the Spectre on it, and that's going to represent the Arrow episode of the crossover, Part 4. You see this giant splash page from the end of comic book Crisis with everybody in the multiverse going up against the Anti-Monitor with the Spectre up really high going at him. That'll probably be a moment that they try to replicate for the actual ending of the big crossover during Part 5. Think of that as sort of their Avengers Endgame, Avengers Assemble moment. Of course, they're probably going to replicate some version of that on the TV show. But because Oliver is becoming the new version of the Spectre, that's probably explaining where he goes after this year's crossover, because the Arrow show is ending. They've killed off Oliver Queen, technically he's dead, but now Stephen Amell can come back at will, Yoda style, just popping up wherever he wants to, because now he's become the literal embodiment of justice and vengeance inside the Arrowverse. So they're sort of taking the metaphor of what the arrow represents and making it a literal thing. He's turning from metaphorical justice into literal justice as the Spectre. The number one WTF, the Anti-Monitor kills the Monitor and wipes the last remaining Earth. This is their snapshot, everybody being gone, except Pariah is able to save a couple of them by sending them to the vanishing point from Legends of Tomorrow. Obviously, this is meant to represent the snap in Infinity War. You end with the downer ending, but you have a part 2 that's coming up, their version of Avengers Endgame, where they bring everything back, because technically, there is no multiverse right now. When the Monitor also calls him Mobius, he's also doing a little bit of the New 52 retcon of the Anti-Monitor character, talking about his origin story. The way he became the Anti-Monitor is that he was born as the person Mobius on the planet Quard, and he wanted to find the anti-life equation, so he built the Mobius chair, the one that you see the new god Metron flying around in all the time. But when Mobius, in the Mobius chair, found the anti-life equation, it cursed him and turned him into what you see as the Anti-Monitor now. I don't know if they're going to get into the anti-life equation during this, or if they're going to invoke any of the new gods, Easter eggs, or anything like that, but there are 2 more hours in the crossover left. I talked about why Lila flipped sides for the Anti-Monitor in my last episode 2 video. That's just another comic book moment from Crisis on Infinite Earths. He just mind controls her and Pariah to do what he wants for the most part. If you don't remember the Vanishing Point, that was the place that they went to at the end of Legends of Tomorrow Season 1. So they're just sort of stuck there on an island outside of space-time until they can come back and defeat the Anti-Monitor. But that's not the end of it, because Lex Luthor winds up being really important to the end of the crossover. He swaps places with Kingdom Come Superman using the Book of Destiny, making himself one of the Paragons. They even have a funny joke where he sort of literally writes it on a piece of paper. But part 2 of the crossover will come back at the end of January. Of course, I'll do videos for that, and I'll do a trailer video for part 4 and talk a little bit more about Oliver being the new Spectre of the DC Universe. If you spotted any big Easter eggs in the episode that I didn't include in the video, just write them below in the comments. While you wait for everything, click here for my Crisis on Infinite Earths episode 2 video, and click here for that brand new Wonder Woman 1984 trailer. Thank you so much for watching. Everybody stay awesome. I'll see you guys tonight.